Channon Rose and patients were in talks with our agency and a few other matches to be on a docuseries television show talking about fertility struggles, surrogacy struggles, all the things.
We're so excited. We're getting closer and closer. This match is a match made in heaven, and I'm so excited. I just wanted to describe a little bit of the process of the medical clearance. And so when I checked in, I peed in a cup, went back into the waiting room, waited, they called me back, and then they asked me some questions about my life and my husband's life and all that good stuff. And then they did some blood work.
They're an agency, so like they will vet that surrogate and make sure. By Dan and Sam, I know you've worked with them. Are you able to like vet her? And she was so busy, like she was able to vet them properly. But
I was vetted.
I was vetted. I was vetted. I was vetted.
I did all sorts of medical clearance, psychological clearance, background checks. My husband even did blood work. Like my whole family literally was involved in this process.
Channon then got sent to the ER due to having an adrenal attack brought on by stress.
I do actually have a text message from Channon saying, I'm filming all our conversation between patients about the birth control pills. We can use it on the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Lizzie, and on this little corner of the internet, we like to sit around and discuss some little things about the internet world and the ether out there that seem a little sus. So if you want to hear some drama about Channon Rose, the surrogacy scandal, the hospital, keep watching because that's what we're gonna talk about today. For those of you that don't know, Channon Rose is a YouTuber who turned social media influencer who a long time ago did some questionable content, to say the least. She gained her following on YouTube by discussing storytime videos about her time in this industry, and then she started gaining a following for a totally different reason after that. She started going down the IVF the IVF journey and struggling with infertility, and a lot of people started following her for her mom content, which is kind of when I jumped on board. I did know of her and her story times, and even though they were interesting stories, loved them, like she was really entertaining. I got pregnant in 2020 just like she did, and I followed along on her journey on social media and of course YouTube, and that's kind of how I got to know Channon Rose's content. I also had never really known anyone that had gone through IVF, never really had heard of the interesting journey that is going down the IVF and infertility rabbit hole, and it was really interesting to kind of follow her along all of her doctor's appointments, to learn all the terminology and to hear all these like intricate things that they had to do. So with that said, her first and her second baby were conceived through IVF. However, her third child and her last embryo, they wanted to conceive with a surrogate. There were lots of reasons for this. Channon has Addison's disease. She also has, I think it was Hashimoto's, and in general, her body didn't really do well with pregnancy, especially this last time with Storm. She had a lot of complications like placenta previa, and what was the other? It wasn't placenta previa, it was something with a cardiac. Brainstorm. Through surrogacy, due to her rough time trying to get pregnant with Storm, there was a lot of medical issues that took place with that pregnancy. I believe she had vasoprevia, which is like a vascular issue, very different than placenta previa, although she did have that also later on in her pregnancy. She was also diagnosed with that as well. So she had these complications. It led to her having to have a C-section, an emergency C-section with Storm. I'm going to insert it right here because it's going to come to me later and I'm going to kick myself for it because I said it in the last video that I did about Channon. But anyway, it was like something that ended up clearing up and no longer causing an issue, but then the placenta previa was causing an issue. Long story short, she wanted to do a home birth, but ended up having to do an emergency C-section with Storm, which really, really scared her and was really, really tough on her body. And then just in general, like the pregnancy just wasn't really going well to where she didn't really think her body could handle it a third time and wanted to go the surrogacy route for that last embryo. So with that said, she found this awesome surrogate named Patience out in Tuolumne County that she thought that she would do a great match with because they were both and just really about like the home birthing process and all this hippy dippy stuff. I forgot to mention, like, the third trimester of her content has turned into really hippy dippy stuff, making, you know, sponges out of a plant, evidently, and like, or loofahs, you know, and just like growing a garden and going off grid and doing all the things that is involved with that homesteading lifestyle, which is great. But, you know, she definitely wanted to find somebody in that realm, which in the surrogacy world is kind of weird to find, because a lot of these agencies do require you to kind of go through with the doctor to follow suit with that, even if you have a midwife, and they want you to take all the, you know, Western medical advice, which does involve vaccines, especially during pregnancy and things like that. So that just wasn't something that she wanted to do. So when she found this match, she thought it was like a match made in heaven. She thought it was perfect, like, yay, let's celebrate. And then things took a turn for the worst. Around the time when patients had to start taking medication, which in preparation was just birth control, so that they can kind of get her cycle in sync, predict when she was going to have a period, and then therefore be able to predict ovulation and so on and so forth to begin the IVF process. They were already working with Your Fertility Advocate, that is an agency that works with putting together a surrogate with the, you know, biological mother and doing all the things and making sure that all the legalities are kind of set in place. So when all of a sudden patient's period didn't come on time when it was supposed to, Channon and Travis both had it in their heads that it had to do something with patients not taking her birth control on time, which, come to light, patients did admit to not taking one of her pills, which she talked to the doctor and said that the doctor mentioned that that had nothing to do with why her period didn't come in on time, because she kind of jumped right back on track, like with the next pill the next day, and that sometimes your periods are just all over the place, like they're not always perfect, you know, and in any normal sense even. So he mentioned that that wasn't anything to do with anything at all. Also, Channon didn't really like how she was still breastfeeding, because they had come to terms in their contract that Patience was going to give up nursing her youngest child while she was doing the IVF process, which is totally understandable. Like I said, you know, the hormones that are involved in lactating do impact a baby, and, you know, and all the things. And when you're dealing with IVF, already a very sensitive, very fragile situation, you don't want to throw any wild cards out there, like nursing and the hormones that come along with it that might be able to throw things out of balance and possibly risk your last baby. However, Channon came to the agency saying, you guys didn't vet her, you guys didn't do your job, like, I want my money back, like, we're not working with this person anymore, all the things, which the agency said, that's fine, you're totally in your right to back up if you want to back out of this whole situation. However, once contracts are signed and money has already been sent over, there are certain things that you are just responsible for. For example, like, Patience had already been sent estrace, which Channon had mentioned was part of the drug series that she was going to start taking for her IVF process, and they had paid for that. They had paid for all the doctor visits and all these other things. These are things you can't necessarily get paid back because you are already agreed to start the process and do. I'm sure that that was in the contract somewhere. You know, I'm obviously, like, I haven't looked at the contract myself, but I'm just thinking, like, you know, in terms of Your Fertility Advocate, they were like, we will give you your portion of the money back that's being held in escrow. However, there's, like, you know, some money that you're not going to be getting back, which I don't really know where that stands today, because I think they might have just caved and given her all her money back, because they were just like, we don't really want to deal with this anymore, and, like, let's just get rid of her. Sometimes just letting bygones be bygones, right? Like, is just the easiest answer. However, recently things did kind of take a little more serious notes with all the stress and all the back and forth. Channon had posted 2 videos about this already, you know, and was talking about it all over social media. Your Fertility Advocate came out with receipts saying she was actually trying to be on a show, and she, you know, her and Patience had both agreed to, like, talk about the surrogacy journey on this Netflix show, or I don't know if it was Netflix, but on a show that was going to, you know, be a documentary about the surrogacy process. And they were excited, and that Channon was trying to, like, stir the pot a little bit with making more drama than there actually was by telling Your Fertility Advocate, hey, I got the text messages from Patience saying that she didn't take the birth control and I'm going to use them for the show. And then Patience came out with her own receipts saying, I was absolutely vetted. Both me and my husband took tests. We did psychological tests along with medical tests, along with all sorts of things. Like, they had been properly vetted in order to go through the surrogacy process. So that was something that Channon was being called out on for Patience and your fertility advocate. With all this stress, though, of hearing all these back and forth things on the internet, Channon had posted these series of videos from her Instagram. So as you can see, she ended up having an Addison's disease flare-up to where her blood pressure was just all over the place. She went to her doctor. They then, told her to go to the ER to get proper treatment, which in this case is cortisone treatment, like cortisone injections, through IV and all that stuff, and to kind of get her blood pressure regulating again, because it can be fatal when you're having one of these Addison's disease flare-ups. They are stress triggered, so I absolutely do believe that, this was true. I don't think she was phonily putting this out there, faking it to kind of make her side seem, more for you to be empathetic with her side more. I don't think that at all. But I do think that maybe she's putting the stress on herself because she is trying to make this content. She is trying to make this whole journey more dramatic than it is. Like I said in my last video, and if you haven't seen it, I'll go ahead and link it up here or something so that you can watch that. After this video, I talk a little bit more in depth about the purpose of why all this is happening. But her views have been tanking on YouTube as of recently. She hasn't been doing the best. And as you know, this is her full-time job. As we know right now, Travis is going to be a firefighter and they are on a volunteer basis at first. They don't get paid a lot of money and, they could be hurting for money, and she needs the views. So if drama isn't just coming up naturally in her life, why not create a little? And I don't know that this is what she's doing. Like I said, all of this is obviously alleged. It's just my opinion. I'm putting everything out there for you to kind of weigh the odds and you come up with a theory yourself, because we don't know the truth. At the end of the day, yeah, we can hear all this and that from both parties, but we're not the ones reading over the contract. We're not the ones, seeing these text screenshots can be manipulated. Heck, AI can even come out with a video, but obviously that's not what's happening here, but you know what I'm saying? Things can absolutely be falsified to stir the pot. And at the end of the day, we just kind of have to take a step back, look at everything and be hey, what is more plausible though? And given Shannon's past track record of all these allegations and all these dramas that were created and manifested, not manifested, what do you call it when you're the one that gosh, why does vocabulary suck so bad today? But constructing, when you're constructing all these situations, obviously you got to think a little bit, is this another one of those situations that you're kind of over-exacerbating and manipulating a bit to make into a show? The proverbial show, not the show that she was supposed to be on, in case you were confused. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this whole Channon Rose surrogacy / going to the ER thing, because it is really interesting to me that she's posting so much of this out there, especially being so personal, and such a gentle journey. This is your last embryo. You would want to tread lightly, but some influencers only know how to monetize their life, whether it's good, bad, ugly, all the things. And I think that is the biggest issue with the whole social media influencer realm, that especially puts their family out there, is that it could be dangerous because you blur the lines between your personal life and reality, and what gets clicks and views and what would make a good thumbnail. So anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. If I haven't said it before, I am so, so grateful for each and every one of you that are here. The year is almost over, and I do have a goal to be monetized by YouTube, hopefully by the end of the year. I don't know, that's like a really high, that's a really high motivation right there. But you can help by liking and subscribing to this channel, and it would totally make my entire year. I hope to see you guys in the future, and thanks again. Bye.
Glue all the pieces back together. Yeah, you take all my wrongs and make them better. Yeah, you